No password requested, so just so it's coming on. Just 1 minute. All set. No password request.
All right, all set?
All set.
Okay, welcome everyone to the May 15th meeting of the Town of Northborough Master Plan Implementation Committee. Start by taking attendance tonight. Julianne Hirsch.
Here.
Now, Amy said she's not going to make it. Millie, is Millie here?
Here.
Yep. Leslie Harrison.
I see her.
You
She's
muted,
here.
Leslie?
Leslie, can you unmute?
Did. I said here, you didn't hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you now.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, Tracy Camerano,
Here.
Fran Backstrom,
Here.
Gene Kennedy,
Here.
Gene Cahill,
Here.
Rick Leaf is here, John Campbell,
Here.
Jen Tolman. Jenny muted,
Yes, here. Hi, Rick.
and Judy Boyle.
Here.
Okay, good attendance tonight. So we, as Lori sent out, we've amended our agenda. Terry Underwood from the Cultural Council would like to make a presentation tonight on a mural project that they're considering. So welcome, Terry, and let us know what's on your mind.
Hi, thank you for having me this evening. And as a volunteer myself, thank you all to the volunteer efforts that you guys put into this. What a heavy lift. So I wish you guys lots of luck in the next round if there's more grant or some funding to be able to do something. So I'm here to talk about some of the ARPA funding that we got, and with one of the projects, our tiny mighty little team, full disclosure, Jen Tallman is on there. And I also want to invite everyone to Open Studios on Saturday. So if you haven't seen the signs, haven't seen the social media, there are going to be a variety of artists scattered around town. There's QR codes in town. You can look them up. There was an email blast that came out from the town. So it's to support local artists from the area and connect them with businesses. And so our small businesses, the artist, and just to get people out. And I think to really, hopefully, have a good time and connect with people that you wouldn't normally do. With that spiel idea, public art. So the ARPA funding that our little team received, just to give some, I guess, some context, because of the timing when ARPA funds were given out, we needed to either spend it right away or contracts or something. And we had just a couple of months. It wasn't a long enough time. In stepped another group, the Northborough Arts Council. And so they are the holder of the funds. There are 3 programs that we're doing for public art. And they are doing one of them because we just can't do it. We have until next year to be able to accomplish what we want to do. One of them is called Apples Around Town. So if you took like a 2-foot by 2-foot apple, slice it in half, and have an artist put something on it, and then hang it on the side of a building or put it in mulch, then it's a way to create neighborhood, community, space making. A lot of towns around the state, probably around the country, really have done things. We have apples, so we're about bringing people together and community. So that's coming down the road. Another one that I'm here to talk about is the panels. We have something, and I'm the one who's personally investigating this. Jen started helping, but we got very busy with Open Studios, and next month will be Porch Fest. So the panels are what we envision is 4, if you can imagine, 4 door-sized panels. And if you take a tree, the front of a tree, and slice it into 4 sections, so in half and half again, and have an artist paint a different season on, or 4 different artists, we haven't got that far down, on the 4 different panels. And so our plan A, and I need to approach the town about this, but I also want to talk to you guys because you guys are working on what the town looks like, feels like, and to be able to pass on to the people who come after you. So our goal is to, or plan A rather, is to ask the town to hang it on the side of the town, these 4 large panels on the side of the town hall that faces the driveway, or the parking lot rather, so that when you drive in, it's something that's really nice, and I think welcoming and unusual. And with some guidance and input from, excuse me, our amazing liaison, Julianne Hirsch, a plan B is a really good idea. So if in your thinking about Blake Street, if the panels don't work out, and I'm not sure if they're going to be metal or wood, I'm shooting for metal, but budget's going to really dictate how much we can do or how we can do it, then maybe somewhere on Blake Street. There was a conversation maybe about a year ago where I came in front of you and discussions of Blake Street and what it could look like, what it could feel like, and concerns were raised about shielding some of the debris around the tracks. So what if the 4 panels painted as an alternative to the building were stuck into the ground to sort of delineate the Blake Street area? So if you can imagine the 4 seasons of Northborough and this tree, which I think is a fantastic idea, spring, summer, winter, fall. So I wanted to talk to you guys about this. I guess really get some input, get some thoughts, but also really to generate some awareness of what we have in mind, because I still sense that collaborative projects, thoughts, input could be really helpful and beneficial to both of our groups. We don't have as many members as you guys do, but you know, we do have lots of ideas and things that even if it's not now, maybe in the future. 6 years is the maximum amount of time, cycles, grant cycles that a person can stay. So my cycle of 6 years is up next year. So I would love to be able to see something get done. So yes, I'm going to open it up to the group.
Well, first of all, thanks you for coming tonight, Terry, and you guys do a really good job, doing things to improve what's going on in town and build community, and a lot of the art projects that have been done have been really helpful, so we appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you for that.
Total
explain
team
to me-
effort.
Explain to me a little bit more the panels. You said there are 4 panels about the size of doors, but then you also talked about a tree or slicing a tree into 4 sections. So I understand how the door panels and the tree metaphor come together.
Okay, so I'm looking at my phone because I'm going to see if I can do this. In one of our meetings, we had some ideas on what this could look like. So, see how this works. And I'm going to put my phone up to the screen. Okay. Okay, this is just from, can you see?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Let's everybody be quiet. So
this is just something off the internet, but this is a visual just to give you an idea. You take a tree And if we can afford the 4 panels, again, it's going to depend on the materials and commissioning artists, maybe 4 different artists, maybe 2 different artists, so that it's something unique and interesting. This was just a drawing, but to give you an idea, so consider this a rough draft. So it's almost like looking out windows. And then it's a tree, different seasons for trees. So what we do is we break off into smaller groups, do research, come back, and then talk to the rest of our team when we have a quorum. And so a small subgroup of us were talking and throwing ideas around, and a tree kind of really hit home. It could have apples on it, may not have apples. We're not that far down, but I wanted to show you what we're thinking about, what we're doing, and just put it out there to hopefully see if there's what your appetite is. If the town says no to hanging 4 panels, those are just the colorful ones that you saw are just something that's on the internet. So that is not an accurate representation of what we would do. I would hope it would be more realistic, but if you have seen some of the doors that were up over the past couple of years that were in the park, last year there were Adirondack chairs that different artists painted. So each door, each chair, each panel would have, and we would jury the artist, put out a call to artists, and among our group, really just dig into what their submissions might look like, rough draft, so to speak, and then pick the artists that we feel are appropriate. So if it doesn't work for the town on the side of the building, and I have not approached the town yet, Julianne felt it would be helpful, and I really think appropriate, to come to you guys and see what you think.
My sense would be, and I'll open this up to everybody else in the committee in a second, my sense would be it'd be more effective to position these panels along Blake Street, working with Lori in terms of how the Blake Street revitalization is going to happen one way or another over time. Have these panels positioned in a little pocket park or in different places on Blake Street. If they're hanging on the side of the town hall building, I'm not sure how visible they're going to be and how many people are going to see them. So my impression would be maybe it would make more sense to integrate them into the work that's going on in Blake Street and position them in strategic places, either all together or spread out in different areas on Blake Street. So that'd be my input, but I'll just open it up to other comments from people on the board.
Yes, comments, please.
I
can't-
actually agree with that, Rick. But I did have a question. What is the length of time that you are thinking to install these for?
Well, we have until next year, and that has to do with the ARPA funding. But I've been researching different, I'm going to call it media materials. So an artist might use a canvas. Is it going to be wood? If the cost isn't ridiculous, I'm in favor of metal because I think it will handle the weather longer. But then the process of taking whatever the artist has envisioned and transferring that onto a metal panel, and then there's the installation. So we want to make sure that it's in the ground deep enough that something can't blow over, that all of these different factors. So there's a lot of pieces to this. I like the idea of putting them kind of maybe a space in between, but together so you can see the full tree.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a good sense of what Blake Street looks like, will look like, or how fast that is moving for you. The benefit of these panels with the ARPA money is that I think we have enough to do something really nice. And if we need to move them, say for instance, town hall moves, say money fell from heaven and everybody decided that the town hall needs to go someplace else, panels don't work out. I would like to see it that they are made in such a way that they can be removed and then maybe put in another place, say on Blake Street, say it was where the doors were in Ellsworth Park, something like that. So I want to find a way, or when I'm asking questions of fabricators, I want to make sure that there's longevity in this.
So you're thinking possibly years?
Oh, yes, yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, not for auction or for sale or anything?
No, no,
Okay.
no, 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 this is long-term, and that's sort of why I thought it would be helpful for me to hear what this group is thinking, but also to let you know what's going on so that it can be part of your thoughts and your thinking and planning, that, you know, there can be some collaborative thoughts, whether it's now or when I'm off the team and other people are here too. I would like to keep those avenues open.
I see other hands. Gene Cahill?
I didn't have a question.
You didn't? Okay. Gene Kennedy?
Are the doors coming back to Route 135 this year?
They are not. We only had bandwidth for a certain amount of work. I love hearing comments like that. They were sometimes free, sometimes purchased, old doors. I primed and all sanded down and primed all of the doors myself in my garage, and then delivered to artists, got them back from artists, and then sealed them in my garage. So I decided it was kind of time to take a break so that I could pay attention to the panels, to the apples, and the open studios, which is this weekend, and then next month Porch Fest. So once open studio is done, I'm looking at Jen. We're gonna get busy. And so keep an eye out for signs around town for all of the cool stuff coming. And the last piece, so this is something for you to think about too. And this is where, if going back in my conversation, I talked about the funds from ARPA, and we needed another tool to not take possession of the ARPA funds because of the limits where you had to spend it within a certain window. So the NAC, Northborough Arts Council, is labels themselves as the fundraising arm. But in the instance where we did not have enough members, enough time to take on all three projects, they are spearheading that effort. And that third project is a statue. So they are doing research and hopefully surveys, something. So there's more to come. And so I would just encourage you to just keep that in mind, that wherever that statue, whatever it comes out to be, is something that would impact what you guys are doing, because that's the look and feel of the town. It's sense of community, a sense of space, and you know, that's what we're trying to do.
Well, I think the idea of Blake Street is a good one. In light of recent events, we could use all the help we could get to sell people on Blake Street.
Mm-hmm.
We have also, in the focus group meetings, had discussions about how to capture the historic nature of the railroad, the depot, and the historic use of that area.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if there could be some sort of historic component to the art that you bring to Blake Street.
So, I will just say that, again, I want to look at this as not just a one-off where I'm in front of you representing the Cultural Council last year or this year. I'd like to see more of these discussions and input and thoughts coming forward because the Cultural Council, like there, I think 329 in the state and composed of all volunteers. And if you go through all of the steps, then per the Mass Cultural Council's rules, so from the state, you receive grant funding, but there's opportunities for smaller amounts of grants. So that means over time, whoever is on the council, they may be able to do something or do more things exactly to what you're talking about. So whether it's trains or historical nature, and I guess I would also encourage collaboration with the Historical Society on that. I'm on the Northborough Revolution 250 group, and they also received some ARPA money. So this past Saturday, there was a Minuteman reenactment event on the town common. It was nicely attended, people in colonial outfits. People came from other towns in their colonial clothing and reenacted Captain Samuel Wood's march as Reverend Peter Whitney / Tom Lowe read a prayer, and they had a drummer and they marched off. What I didn't realize until just before the event is that by the time they walked to Lexington and Concord, the battle was already over. So they turned around and came back. But it was a great event. We've made 5 videos about it. So these are all things that you guys need to be aware of, that we're using the town common, and it helps to create a culture and a community of things going on. And I've really personally had a blast. If I didn't have this ridiculous thing called a job, I would have more fun connecting with these different groups, garden, junior women's. There's so many opportunities. So
Okay, Terry, I'd like to just see if there's any other comments or input about the panels and the trees and stuff. Anybody else on the committee have any input or comments on that? Go ahead, John Campbell.
Just a question, Terry, on the signs themselves, the images themselves. Were you envisioning that the artist creates the work right on the medium? Or is it that the artist creates a design and then that's transferred, digitally as if the same as sign making is done, for instance?
So that is what I'm exploring. And as I'm learning, 2 different ways can be very different price points. And so I'm still gathering information because, as I said, I would like to see the seasons of Northborough, so 4 panels. I don't want to be reduced down to 3 because of price. So, excuse me, I'm still on the early stages of understanding all of that. So it could be, maybe it's put on something where it's a wrap. That's something that's done. I want to explore all of those and weigh the benefits and pros and cons to see what will withstand the weather, and really just be there for a very long time, years. It would be nice if like the mural on the side of the gas station, I think, so for your information, they had to sign something. I think it's like 10 years. So the owner of the gas station, if my memory serves me with a contract, that the owner, whoever owns a gas station, cannot touch that mural. So it will be there for a long time. that's our goal with the apples. That's our goal with the panels, something that's long lasting. And so we're doing the best we can with the funds.
Any
Good,
other-
there's a designer I know of that may have some advice for you, so I'll try to reach out and
Please.
get you an idea.
Do share, yes.
Any other,
Send it to Jen
any
and
other
she'll
questions or
have-
comments from the committee? I can't see everybody's picture. Judy, go ahead. You're muted.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Terry. I loved early on when you said something to the effect that you just wanted something different, thought-provoking, conversation starting. And this is, it's just such a unique idea. I'm very excited and I hope it comes to fruition. And then thinking of a couple other people, Jean Kennedy, your comment about the railroad and paying homage. Suddenly, for some reason, an image came into my mind that if there's any like old track that we're not using, I know you talked about, Terry, whether it's metal or wood, incorporating portions of not, the tracks that are no longer in use, possibly your posts, and then hang the wood doors in between, something swinging effect or something like that. I could be, crazy, which I've certainly been accused of before, but I just thought that was a really nice thought, Jean. And then my third comment is one of the nights at town meeting, Susie Salika got up and talked about the lighting of the tree. And she had mentioned that the tree is going to have to be replaced soon. So, we know that, that tree is so iconic that I think this is a wonderful way. If it is decided that trees will be painted on these doors, I think it's a wonderful way to pay homage to our beautiful tree and, just kind of create just a, an ongoing theme. So just some thoughts that popped up through the conversation. But I applaud your work and I just love seeing all these fun things popping up around town.
Thank
And they
you
don't
very
cost
much.
a lot. You're welcome.
Other comments or questions?
I have a comment. I also want to agree with Jean and Judy that if the image is somehow historical, I think that would be really, it's such a sense of pride for Northborough. But I forgot the second thing, so never mind.
Okay. If it occurs to you, you can bring it
Okay,
back up
thank you.
again. Any other comments or questions? I'd like to get Lori's input also in terms of how, Lori, you might see this factoring into the whole, downtown revitalization and whether we think the placement of these panels might be most effective.
Well, as you know, because I've spoken about this before, I would love to see some art, particularly in the green strip between the municipal parking lot and the railroad tracks. So even with the Beta Group plan, they're not really proposing to do anything in that area. And it's just such a kind of an unpleasant scene that I think that adding some screens to that area, closer to the Pocket Park than Fatouche Restaurant. But I think that would be fabulous. We have been talking quite a bit with the focus group about the railroad theme, because that little pocket park is the site of the old passenger railroad depot. So if there could be something to do with that to kind of tie in, when we did the first community outreach meeting, there was quite a bit of discussion about the need to have a theme. So with the benches and with the pavilion and the various other aspects of the streetscape design. So if you could help us bring out that theme with the art, I think that would be super helpful. So I like the idea of maybe incorporating the railroad ties. I think that's really clever. But certainly I am not an art professional, so I challenge you
Here am
folks.
I.
You folks to come up with something that incorporates that art theme. I understand the tree. I think that that's a good idea too. But maybe if there could be a way to incorporate both into the art that's in that specific location. But absolutely, I would love for you folks to do a project on Blake Street.
Okay. I know you guys have the rest of the meeting to go, and I want to thank you for this time and the opportunity to speak with you and sort of do a dry run past you. So I may, if I have an issue trying to move things along, I may be coming to you to ask for a push with administration or something. I don't know yet, but I'm excited to explore all of this and hopefully in light of the not so great news from the town meeting, here's a little something. And I just see more years coming where more can be done.
Yeah, I think we all agree. I think we'd certainly be interested in continuing to work with you, and having Jen on our committee is a good interface point between what you guys are doing and what we're doing. So maybe, Jen, as you know what's happening at upcoming meetings, you can talk to me or Lori about putting some things on the agenda to keep us informed. If it makes sense, Terry, for you to come back at some point, we can do that too. But I think there's definitely a good opportunity here to collaborate on this or anything that makes the downtown more attractive and more friendly and encourages people to be in it. I think we're all in favor
Right.
for. So I think we're going down a good path here. So once
Yep.
again, thanks for coming tonight. We appreciate it.
Yep, thank you so much. And I look forward to future years where we can walk down there, have a seat, have a sandwich, have a coffee, and not feel rushed instead of just driving through the center of town as quickly as you can.
Yeah, we feel the same way. All right. Thanks again, Terry.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Good night, Terry.
Okay, well, given the fact next thing we want to talk about is kind of what's going on with Blake Street, this kind of ties in a little bit. So Lori, when you sort of bring the committee up to date on what's going on with the work with the consultants and the whole Blake Street improvement project.
Sure. So of course, disappointing news at town meeting. So we didn't get any funding, which was super, super unfortunate. I had, prior to town meeting, submitted those 2 grant applications. So one was for $500,000. That was the Complete Streets grant. And then the other one was for $756,000. That's the MVP grant. I'm more confident about the Complete Streets grant than I am about the MVP grant. And the reason is because when I was looking at the projects that they like to fund, it seems like almost all of the projects were in environmental justice communities. So an environmental justice community is one that has a super large minority population and or a significant low-income population. So I submitted the grant application. I tried to make the best case because, of course, the downtown area, even though it's not an environmental justice area, it does have a significant population of low-income folks. Of course, a significant population of renters and some minorities, not a significant number. So we'll see how that goes. But even if the MVP grant doesn't come through, we do have some other options. There is a grant that the application is due in January. It's called the Shared Streets and Spaces Grant. And it funds parks improvements, as well as sidewalks and the like. The maximum award for that is 250,000. So it's significantly less than the amount of money that I applied for the MVP grant. And then there is also the potential of applying for CPA funding. So that, of course, is very limited as to what would be eligible for funding. So essentially, we're just talking about the park at the corner of Route 20 and Blake Street. I think we can make the argument to include the parking, the perpendicular parking on Blake Street. As you know, there are significant drainage issues with that parking lot. And then the proposed plan by the Beta Group includes drainage that then is connected to the grass strip that would be between the large municipal parking lot and Blake Street. So it would be possible, I think, for us to wrap all of those items together and fund that piece at least. The Pierce Street piece, the sidewalk, and some improvements, walkway improvements to War Memorial Park. I'm feeling really good about the Complete Streets grant for that. So we have also challenged the Beta Group to alter the design to reduce the cost by about $1 million. It's slightly less than that. It's more in the range of $800,000 to $900,000. So what that means is that chances are there will be no sidewalk on the east side of Blake Street. Other things that we were looking to cut is leaving the sidewalk that's on the side of 4 West Main. So that sidewalk was replaced as part of the Route 20 improvement project. It's in fairly good shape. It's concrete. There's vertical granite curb. So that we could just leave as is and save money that way. We are looking for ways to redo the sidewalk on the west side of Blake Street. We still would like to have concrete sidewalk. Instead of doing vertical granite curb, we were talking about doing a monolithic concrete curb. It's slightly less expensive than doing the granite, but you get a similar look. So of course, if you go up to Northborough Crossing, that's what they have. So it still looks really nice, and it has longevity to it. But there would be a saving. So we're still in the phase of working things out. Beta Group had some really good ideas for how to cut costs. They are revising the plans accordingly, and we would like to have community outreach workshop number 2 on June 30th. So I've already booked the library. We were talking about having it at the same time as last time, 6:30. It seemed to work out well for folks. Pretty much we were done by 8:30, so it wasn't too late of a night. But I'd be happy to answer any questions or field any comments. John? Go. You're on mute.
I'm back. Your comment about CPA fund eligibility, I got thinking about that a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think you could apply everything we did at the town common, if you will, to something you would do at Blake Street. Obviously, the town common was the acquisition of property, but the improvements we did to the land, spaces to sit and gather and walk, were all approved under CPA. So, um, not speaking for the committee, but to me, the better walkability, gathering space, the pergola, and the parking adjacent to it could all be crafted as a new public space, enhancing a public space, however you want to phrase it. And I think maybe more than you think could be put into the application.
Oh, so how do you feel about the drainage? So the bioswale. So what we were talking about is eliminating the sidewalk on the west side, sorry, the east side of Lake Street and making that all grass strip. But we still wanted to include the bioswale. So the catch basin that would be in that perpendicular parking area would be piped to the rain garden that's in the grass strip in between the large municipal parking lot and Lake Street. Do you think that that's something that would be fundable?
I think that it could. I think the legislation is broad when it comes to recreation. Once they adapted the CPA law so that it could work on new recreation, not just equipment or parks that were created with CPA, but you can use it on new recreation or updates. And we've applied that at Assabet and school playgrounds and other places. So, and the creation of gardens is something actually listed as a suggestion. So you could easily make the case that the structural improvements and everything else you mentioned toward the contribution to the, how it would look, gardens that you would create, some of the other elements that you had included in the presentation already. And then, as I say, the gathering space, the pergola, it seems optimistic to me that you could craft it that way and that I would think it would get good support.
That's encouraging. Thank you, John.
One thing to keep in mind is that the grants, the Complete Streets grant and the MVP grant are very specific in what they'll allow the money to be used for. So we can't just combine, let's say we're successful in both grants and we had 500,000 plus $750,000 of grant money. We just couldn't assume that now we have $1.2 million of money to use however we want. The Complete Streets money can only be used for certain kinds of work related to sidewalks and streets and things like that. The MVP money can only be used for certain other kinds of things. And so at our last focus group meeting, we kind of had a discussion about, depending on which grants get funded and for how much, someone said one way to reduce the cost of the project would be not to build a pergola and to take the money that was going to be used for the pergola and use it to do sidewalks. But the fact of the matter is the MVP grant can't be used for any kind of work like that. So in fact, you can't take some MVP money and not do something that was approved for MVP and turn it into something that would be a Complete Streets kind of thing. So we have to be careful in terms of how we can use things. I think the CPA money is a lot more general in terms of there's certainly rules as to what's allowed and what's not allowed, but within what's allowed, I think there's more flexibility there. So we have to keep in mind that depending what gets agreed to, what gets funded and for what amount, there's a lot of separation between what this grant money can be used for that's going to have to be managed. I'd like to bring up another point about this because I think Lori's doing a good job in terms of working with Beta to try and manage this as best as possible. And I'm all for trying to do something to make some or all of this project happen. I think it would benefit the town in the long run to do it. But I have a concern that I've discussed with Lori, and I think she and I kind of come down on different sides of this right now. I took a message from town meeting that, yes, there was no approval to spend money to do this. And I also think between the sense I got at town meeting and discussions I had with people leading up to town meeting where I tried to develop enthusiasm for this project. Some of the feedback I got was, this is kind of a stupid thing to do. The downtown is a mess. And, you know, no amount of money we throw at it's really going to make it a whole lot better. And there's got to be better things to do with the money. So I get a sense that some people who voted against this, not just voted against it because they didn't want to spend the money, but because they thought the whole idea of it wasn't particularly a good idea. And once again, I disagree with that, but I'm concerned that if we find an alternative way to get this project done, and people start seeing things happening on Blake Street, it's like, well, what the hell? We voted that down last year. So what are you guys doing? You know, kind of thing. I've got that, it just gnaws at me. And one thing I like about funding some of this with CPA money means we have to come back to town meeting next year with a presentation about how we're going to use CPA money and maybe grant money to do Blake Street. So everybody in town is aware of the fact that this project is not dead. We've been working on it. We've come up with alternative ways of funding that probably would have absolutely no impact on taxes or the tax rate. And we could make another fairly good presentation on it, but we'd also make it apparent that we've been working behind the scenes to keep this project going. So I don't know if anybody else shares that concern, but I'm a little concerned that some of this grant money comes through and we start doing things in advance of informing the town about what we're doing in the background. It's just going to feed into this thing that nobody listens, you know, residents are going to say, nobody listens to what we're telling these guys, you know, kind of thing. So, like I said, that just gnaws at me, and people may have a different impression, but I'd be interested in getting some feedback about that particular thought. So the floor is open. Who'd like to talk? John?
I'm glad you brought it up, Rick, because I have been trying to take lessons from town meeting myself. And one major thing stuck out to me in the end. We can't take the idea of using CPA is great. You know that I would support that. We can't take for granted, however, that people will always approve what we bring forward for CPA. They have so far, but previous town meeting and this one, there was still remarkable resistance to the concepts that have passed more easily at town meeting. So that said, the point I'm trying to make is when we get behind an idea in this committee and get behind in particular what Lori is promoting, we need to advocate for support at the town staff and other town committee levels. And there needs to be consensus here first, that we're all in agreement on the scope and the timing. And then, you know, starting now, advocating at the town level to get support from our boards, our select board, obviously, but other boards. It would have helped if we had a representative of financial planning that served on this committee. I believe we're absent that member for quite some time. And if that person was willing to advocate, we might have been able to get to a spot in financial planning where this project ranked in the use of free cash, and we weren't arguing about that at town meeting and then getting negative feedback for trying to manipulate the use of free cash and that kind of thing. So that, you know, we go forward knowing that downtown enhancement as part of our master plan is still being supported at the highest levels. And that's the point I'm trying to make. I felt like we didn't have that to the extent that we could have.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Brian, did you have a comment?
I did. First, I just want to address what John had just brought up. We don't have a financial planning member on this committee any longer because the select board determined that the interpretation of our town charter prohibits financial planning members to be anything other than liaisons, non-voting members of committees. So whether the person could attend and then send the information back, that certainly could be helpful, but since we're online, they certainly could look at our meetings as well. I will tell you that I had conversations with lots of different people about a lot of different things related to town meeting. And I never there's a whole group of people that just says downtown's not worth it, right? Because they can't see the baby steps that need to be taken to make it something. But all I heard was the real concern about Prop 2.5, about the cost of things and how we have to be really fiscally conservative moving forward until we can get our footing. I didn't hear anyone say that the project was a bad idea. It was the
Right.
timing of the project and the costs associated, even though it was going to be free cash versus borrowing. Nobody wants to spend any money. I mean, I kept saying it was like, kids were saving money to go to Disney World, but daddy just got laid off. So we're not going to Disney World. Like, this was Disney World that we can't afford right now. But I never thought we're going to have a real downtown anyway, but I bought into the idea of what Laurie has been presenting about what Blake Street and Pierce Street, and Rick, you have been advocating for, that little area itself, by itself, could make a huge difference.
Mhm.
But we also now have the select board, a new select board on Monday night, going to be talking once again about what we do with 4 West Main Street. They thought hopefully they're just going to then dust off the recommendations that have already been made and move on with it, so that we can stop saying, well, if 4 West Street is bought, and let them do something with Blake Street. Well, if we do something with Blake Street, maybe somebody will want to buy it. I mean, we need to get off that cycle and just to the chase, look like we have an investment in the area and keep our fingers crossed that somebody will buy the building from us and just make it more vibrant. But I only heard it was about finances, not about the project being lacking value. It was all about timing.
Thanks, sir. Other comments?
I had a couple questions. I agree with both what John and Fran brought up about people not necessarily rejecting the project, just rejecting the timing and the cost. But I wondered if any of this eliminating of sidewalks and things like that will make us not eligible for some of the grants you've already applied for.
So the Complete Streets grant, the funding is limited to the projects that we included within our Complete Streets prioritization plan.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was looking up the Blake Street project, what I found is I could have sworn we had sidewalk improvements on Blake Street, but they didn't make it to the final version of the prioritization plan. So the only things that were listed for Blake Street in the prioritization plan was LED street lighting, pedestrian scale street lighting, and parks improvements. That was it. So I couldn't apply for sidewalk improvements on Blake Street, which was very disappointing and something I just discovered within the last couple of weeks before the grant was due.
But the Pierce Street sidewalks were in there.
The Pierce Street sidewalk was in there. So the way I submitted the grant application is I pretty much put in the entire Pierce Street project. So everything. The rapid flashing beacon, the crosswalk improvements, the sidewalk, the granite curb, the walkways in the War Memorial Park. Pretty much everything, even the street trees associated with the municipal parking lot there, the parking lot pavement, as much as I possibly could. So then for Blake Street, the only thing I applied for was 10 LED streetlights and the conduit associated with that. So we'll see what happens. There may be a possibility to negotiate with them should we get the funding for Blake Street. So maybe what we could say is, well, we decided we only want to do 5 LED streetlights on Blake Street, but in order to install those, we have to dig up the existing sidewalk. So will you fund that? So I'm going to try and be creative with them. uh, sometimes they can be rather flexible. And so we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But yeah, that sidewalk along the east side of Blake Street, I just don't see how I'm gonna be able to get that funded. Unless, John, you think that I'd be able to get CPA money for that? I don't know.
We can try. I think we should, work together on. I'll look for examples and we've certainly stretched the boundary of what we've done with CPA in town. Not trying to do anything against the rules, but just to run with what they give you. And lots of towns have done creative things with it. We can do it too.
Okay.
I
that
agree
sounds
with
good,
John's,
John.
I agree with the comments that I think at least Lori and I need to get before the select board fairly soon, if not other committees in town, maybe appropriations and finance or whatever, and just explain to them kind of what we're doing here and get some sort of feedback as to how aggressively we can move and what kind of support we can expect or what questions they need to have answered, kind of thing. But anybody else on the committee have any other comments about just this general discussion about how important is it to get back before the town in general and let them know that we're going to continue to work on Blake Street and things may happen? Like I said, I view going to town meeting next year with a proposal to use CPA money to advance the project as a way to bring it forward to the town again. I agree with John. It doesn't guarantee it's going to be approved, but at least it's a vehicle to communicate to the town the status of the project and how it's, what could be done to keep it moving and what the funding sources would be to do it, as opposed to not getting back before the town and some grant money becomes available between now and next spring, and it becomes apparent we're down there working on the Pierce Street sidewalk and we're trying to install LED lights on the street and we're doing some work in the Pocket Park, and I don't know. Just any other feedback or comments just about that before we move on?
Rick,
Yeah.
if I could just say, should we get the funding for any of those grants? I plan on doing press releases. Nobody should be surprised. And if we get those grants, we will find out about one of them in July and the other one in the August, September timeframe. And then, of course, the intent is to have a meeting before the Board of Selectmen to explain the final design. So there'll be plenty of opportunities. Of course, the website will be updated on a regular basis. We'll have the second community outreach meeting. So I don't think anybody is going to be surprised if we start construction in the spring. So
I don't know, Julianne, what's your input on this? I mean, how soon do you think that something ought to be presented to the select board about the status of what's going on with this project and the fact that, the committee and Lori are actively working on it?
So at our next meeting, which is actually Monday, we're going to be discussing a vacant building committee for people to figure out what to do with 4 West Main and the fire station, which will soon be empty. So that's in the scope of this project a little bit, the current fire station. I think that, the comment, well, if we do Blake Street, more will be developed. It's a little bit of a chicken and egg thing, right? It's like, what do you do first to really make the project happen? And if the select board can really try to move this committee forward quickly, the two have to work together, because whatever they decide is going to help Blake Street, it's going to have to be part of it, right? So Because I have heard comments like, well, this is a small part of downtown. What's the big picture? What is the big picture? And I think one of the big questions is what's happening with 4 West Main. So that question has to be answered. And I think the select board knows that.
All right. Do you think, just don't want to sort of get in the way of things here. Do you think it'd be appropriate for me to be there Monday night and add some input through that discussion about kind of what the current status of Blake Street is post-town meeting? Or could you provide, being a member of this committee, could you provide an update to the select board that, this committee is still actively trying to decide between grant money and possibly CPA funding, a way to keep some semblance to the project moving forward?
So when we discuss the vacant, building committee, if you could possibly come in as a member of the public, you, Rick Leaf, and say that it would be beneficial to both projects, Blake Street and the vacant buildings, for somehow, everybody to be working together towards the same goal here. Unless you all disagree that this can be an independent project without thinking about those vacant buildings. But I think it makes, well, what do you all think?
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. So, Lori and I had talked before about, this is hypothetical. Let's say hypothetically, part of 4 West Main became like an artsy area, like the restaurant area or something, whatever, the second floor. So, or eventually, once the repairs are done or whatever, can we apply for, through Mass Cultural Council, like some of their ADA compliant grants, like to fix the sidewalk that leads up to the building, or fix the parking lot so it's more accessible if it was an artsy area? Like, I'm not saying that the town is ever going to commit to saying, hey, let's put a community center in 4 West Main Street like Jen wants, but let's say they say, we'll commit to, I'm making this up, like a year or a year and a half of using the vacant space while people figure out what's happening. And you can, in the meantime, the grant that's open, this spring can, we collectively could apply to that ADA grant that helps make an artisty space. You know what I mean? Like, is there a way to tie it together and use it without committing forever to it? I'm not trying to be deceitful or whatever. I'm just thinking, like, is there a creative, because what I heard from everyone at town meeting, also the whole tightening the belts and whatever else, like, how can we use what grants are available and as a temporary but also permanent fix? Am I saying that?
So Jen, I did look into the municipal ADA grant.
Oh, you did? Thank you.
And I have applied for it previously. Unfortunately, there's so little money that's put towards this specific grant, and it's so competitive that I didn't think that it was worth it to apply for the grant. I thought that it was going to be kind of a waste of my time. Again, from what I could see, the types of projects that they tend to fund is kind of like an ADA accessible door at the senior center, a ramp at the senior center. It
Like, they wouldn't fix the parking spots, so
it's
they're
like
compliant.
small bits of money
Mhm.
for projects like that. So I didn't think that this project was a good fit, especially because 4 West Main Street is largely empty.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it could be like used as a crutch without making it diminish what I like to do, using it as like a crutch to say, you know what, this is going to be an artist space for a year and we need it to be ADA compliant. So the parking lot doesn't have ADA spots and it's not pitched correctly and there's no crosswalk right there. So
Yeah.
I was just thinking, could we tie it all in and make it a pretty package or not really?
The major limit to the building is the elevator. So the building inspector has deemed the elevator as unsafe,
Even
which
for, like, the first
means
floor. I'm just
that
thinking,
there
like,
can be no
yeah.
public access above the ground
First floor.
level.
But at least to use like that kind of a grant to get in the first floor, like a means to an end almost, for lack of a better shady way, you know, like, could you say it's going to be an artist space for a year? I'm making this up, obviously. Like, say it could be an artist space for a year and we could do like some gallery thing or whatever. That's not a lot of money because people want a place to go and something to do for nothing. So, but in the meantime, we are going to use this grant to make the parking lot compliant, like, you know, like tie it all up, maybe.
So the conversations I've had with the building inspector in particular and the DPW director who oversees our facilities guy is that the building can't be occupied for public safety reasons at this time. So that grant is due in 2 weeks. So I just, yeah, I don't think that we can pull it off for this year.
Thanks.
So Rick, can I
Yeah, right.
just so that I can be clear, publicly, I cannot support revitalization of downtown if we're going to try and keep that building. That building needs to become a revenue source for the town so that we have tax revenue, so that we can do some of the things that Lori is proposing to us to beautify our downtown and other areas. We need tax revenue. We need that building to be fully functional as a commercial, residential business entity, not something that we use for municipal purposes. We need the tax revenue. That's what I heard at town meeting. That's what tightening the belt means. We need to increase new growth, new diverse taxes so that we can fund the things that we want and like. We can't fund the things that we want if we don't have the tax revenue to do it. And this building would be, and 11 Pierce Street would be ideal buildings to sell and have become tax revenue generating businesses, commercial and otherwise. Otherwise, we're never going to have the money to do these things. It's just, it's not feasible. And we really have to start thinking that way.
Yeah, good point.
I wanted to ask a question about town meeting. It sounds like there might be a special town meeting in the fall related to White Cliffs, and should we be prepared for maybe an article related to this in a smaller, you know, just trying to think whether we could take advantage of having another town meeting to maybe have some sort of support. Not the original proposal, but some chunk that could be broken off, just a thought.
I don't know, Julian, is there going to be a town meeting in the fall? Didn't talk about that?
I don't think that anything has been decided yet.
I just want to keep it on the radar and think about it.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. If there is going to be a special town meeting, we ought to discuss what, if anything, we might want to present or ask for approval if there's anything at that point made sense. It may not make sense, but that's a good point. Any, Judy? You're muted.
Okay, Rick, back to your original question about, you know, do you and Lori go before the selectmen, or, you know, how do we want to send out the message that just because the Blake Street project was voted down at town meeting, it's such a highly, whatever we could do here, it's going to be, it's such a highly visible area. And I think the general population is feeling there's so many good ideas, and we have committees that get all the way through, come to a vote, and then the idea is abandoned. That happened for the town office's feasibility study committee, on which I sat. We met for a year, hired architects, interviewed architects, hired architects. At the end of our committee, we voted on White Cliffs as the place that would make the best place for the town offices. And now it's decided they're going to stay where they are for the immediate future. So again, I think the general perception from our community as a whole is that everybody has great ideas. We're all working to a common goal, but we're not making progress. And I think our small little project is sending a huge message to the whole community that we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And if we have to cut it back, and if the residents can drive by that all the time and see, like, okay, this committee that's been meeting for years now, I just started, but I've been watching, and the ideas, the progress you all have made is just so remarkable and so notable. We can't stop now. We need to be like, we're doing this, and it's going to take baby steps. But if we can do this in any shape or form, I think because of the location, it's going to have some ripple effect. I hope I'm right, but I say we do not back down on this.
Yeah. One thing I think, Julianne, as a discussion, I think I will attend the meeting, Monday night. I think it would make sense, maybe if I get up to speak, I should speak as my role as representing the MPIC. One thing I think is important is if in fact there are decisions made about this building reuse committee, I think the MPIC should have representation on that committee. That'll be one way to sort of have an interface point between the separate projects, in a way to keep the building reuse committee informed as to what this committee is thinking about and doing on Blake Street. And if they can come together, maybe having some MPIC representation on the building reuse committee is one way to integrate all these things that are going on simultaneously. Does that make sense to you?
Makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. So maybe you could advocate for that, and I could bring that up also during the discussion.
Okay.
All right, but we've got a couple of bullet points under this whole thing, but before we get off this topic, any other, input or thoughts about kind of how we move forward with continuing to implement whatever we can in this Blake Street strip? I think, once again, like I said, I think Lori's been doing a wonderful job working with the consultants and moving this along. They're very interested in finding a solution that will be cost effective, but still impressive and work well for the town. So if nothing else, we have ARPA money that we spent to get a plan done. And certainly if nothing else, we need to get the plan complete, do another review with the public at the end of June, and eventually, finish our engagement with Beta Group. And at that point, we'll have a good plan to work off of. So we'll at least get that much complete. Then the next step would be to start implementing what's in the plan. And that'll be kind of the next challenge as to how and when we can do that. But before we close off the discussion, any other comment or input about this? It's all been very helpful.
I'm just going to say, the Building Reuse Committee, I mean, as a newly formed committee, their first meetings, they're going to sort of be saying, well, what are our goals? What are we trying to achieve? And the only proposal that has any real merit at this point are the recommendations out of the downtown revitalization plan for both buildings. So having somebody from the MPIC on that committee, or making sure that that committee fully understands that we have proposals for both buildings that are revenue producing so that they're an asset to the tax base and will help to revitalize downtown, should be the preeminent goals of that committee. And it would be up to us just to continue to advocate for that. And then we can also be cynics and say that we helped the town invest $40 million in downtown revitalization by virtue of our support of the fire station. So we could, to a certain extent, declare victory and go home. I mean, that's a lot of money. It's going to be downtown. It's going to be a change to downtown. So I think we need to sort of, group a number of these items together as the overriding vision or plan for downtown. And Blake Street is only one piece of that. But we should continue to move forward to support the various initiatives that we've been working on. And the people who say, well, downtown isn't worth investing in, probably the same people that say we shouldn't spend any money on our schools or our streets or anything else. So I'm not sure they're representative of the entire sense of what the town is.
Yeah.
Rick, Millie has had her hand up for a while.
I'm sorry. Millie?
That's okay. I think, one of the things I think we want to do is have a cohesive message because we're the advocates for what we're doing here. And I feel like, some of us are getting questions like, why are you spending money if it was voted down? And I think that it was brought up a couple times tonight that the project itself was not voted down, just the financing. And so that I think is a really good message to keep putting out there on a consistent means that we're the voice for that. We're the advocates. And it's important that we have a cohesive message about that. And that we're just trying to be creative about how we can continue with the project that actually wasn't voted down, that the financing was. So
I also contend that the feeling at town meeting, and you guys might not agree with this, but it's a moment in time, a snapshot of support. There's a very tiny segment of the population. So to take that as an entire year's worth of, messaging based on those few, and this was a town meeting for the books, as we know. I'm not sure we need to rely on that consistently in terms of a
Yes,
metric
and
of support.
I think it's also important to recognize that the difference between approval and denial was 41 votes. That's it. 41 votes. In a community of almost 16,000 people.
What, 12,000 registered voters, I think, right? Something like that. Yeah.
Cute, Fran.
All right. Well, this has been a helpful discussion. I will, I'll attend. If anybody else on this committee would like to attend the select board meeting Monday night and express your opinions also as to, how whatever happens with building reuse or to interface with what we're trying to do here, I invite anybody else to come and, speak also kind of thing. But I'll be there to see how that goes and make a few comments, and we'll see if we can't, get a good working relationship between our committee and whatever's going on at the select board level as far as looking at building reuse. And I think these points raised tonight about, making sure that the downtown revitalization plan is seriously considered as part of building reuse are very good points. And, revenue generation out of these buildings are good points, all things that need to be considered, and certainly something that if we have representation on that building reuse committee, we can continue to bring forward during committee discussions. So Lori, we have two other bullets under this topic here about wayfinding signage and sign bylaw. Do you have something in particular in mind to bring about those two?
Well, Julianne asked me to add these onto the agenda. As far as wayfinding signage, certainly agree it's super important. As you know, I did submit a grant application last year for the design of wayfinding signage, which was not funded. So right now, we don't have any designs, nor do we have any funding to implement. As for the sign bylaw, the good news is that one of the benefits of having a town meeting that lasted 4 nights and having our zoning articles be the very, very last articles on the town meeting warrant is that we were able to pass significant changes to the sign bylaw for the business districts, including the downtown business district, with no opposition whatsoever. And in fact, no comment or question.
That is a first.
So that has been accomplished. We have done also significant modifications to the design guidelines. We were in the process of doing a new format for the design guidelines when unfortunately Michelle went out on leave. So I am now holding down the fort for the planning department, and I have not had the time, nor do I have the expertise in a publisher to continue with that project. We are looking for staff expertise within the town hall to help with that project. So hopefully we will be able to move forward and have new design guidelines in place by September, October timeframe.
Any other questions or comments about those?
I have a
Or
question.
Joanne?
Can, the design for wayfinding signs, that can't be done internally?
No, we don't have the expertise to design signs internally. So typically what you do is you go with a well, there are consultants who do that type of work. So the grant that I applied for last year was $25,000 worth of technical assistance. So I applied for a grant from the Downtown Improvement Initiative. So the way that works is they would assign you a consultant, and then there would be a community outreach campaign to have the public help with the design of the wayfinding signage. And then, of course, we need additional money for implementation. If you're just talking about doing something as simple as installing a sign that says municipal parking and have it be blue with no frills or nothing special to it, then certainly we have the ability to do that. That would be really cheap. It just wouldn't be like a theme, like most communities, they have some sort of logo that they put on their signs, and then it carries throughout the downtown area. So if that's what you're talking about, we do not have the expertise or the funding to make that happen.
I guess I'm just shocked that that would cost $25,000. But what about using CMRPC for that?
They don't have the expertise either, as
Oh,
far as I know.
I could ask.
Sure, I'd be interested.
Yeah.
Usually it's like a graphic designer.
Lori, I have a question. Like
Sure.
hypothetically, if you said we're going to use sign company ABC, couldn't you use their sign company ABC's in-house designer to say, put the library on a sign and we want wayfaring signs, something like, like they do in downtown Hudson. They have like those big signs that
Yeah, I mean, certainly, like, for example, I just contacted a sign maker to do the dog park rules signs. So I gave them the rules. I gave them an example of a sign, a dog park rules sign that I liked. And I said, can you do something similar with this color scheme? And then they sent me a mock-up.
Right.
So yes, that is very simple. Typically, I can send you folks some examples of what I was interested in getting for the town of Northborough last year when I applied for the grant funding. So like I said, there's quite a bit of community outreach involved, and you use the expertise of, a professional planner as well as a graphic designer to come up with something that's unique and kind of like a brand for downtown Northborough. So I don't know of a sign maker who would do that for us. Um, but if there is a sign maker who will do that for us, they'll want money, and I do not have money. So we don't have the financing to implement unless, I do have a small consultant budget. But it's quite small. So I'm concerned that I wouldn't be able to fund that.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question about that project. Could the students at Assabet make the signs?
I don't know.
They've done a lot to help us in town, and that kind of a nice community spirit thing. And
Yeah, I don't know if they have that expertise. I know they have carpentry. I know they have plumbing. I know they have electrical. I don't know if they have the skills to do sign making.
Rick, I hate to put you on the spot, but I know that you're a little familiar with the towns in the Berkshires. Have you ever seen the wayfaring signs in Stockbridge?
Yes.
It's quite simple, but very New Englandy and very attractive. That's my opinion, and it's a no frills kind of a thing, but it's helpful and it's attractive. Would you agree?
Yeah, but as Laurie said, there's a theme to it. Somebody came up with an idea for there's a kind of a general consistency across the signs kind of thing that was, as opposed to just a sign that said public parking with an arrow to the right there. They went, nicer than that, kind of thing. So there is a certain amount of thought that goes into if you want to do something across your town that's consistent, sort of figuring that out first before you make the signs. And then how do you do that? Do you hire somebody to do that design for you? Do you do it internally within the town? And then I'm not sure how Stockbridge, made their signs, but I think it's a good, the idea about having consistent signage improves the attractiveness of the town and it's functional. It shows people where to go and what to do, so I can see, both sides of the discussion kind of thing. And yeah, I'm not sure from an Assabet standpoint what they do, but I think if we wanted a series of signs around the downtown pointing out certain things, and we want them to look kind of alike and carry a theme, then either internally within the town, somebody will have to figure out what that theme is and agree to it, or have someone do some thought and make a presentation back to the town about what that would be. So.
We can, we just did like the call for artists for the mural that's going up, at Assabet Park. We had 8 different people submit their ideas. So, and a huge difference between the ideas. So maybe we could do the similar kind of thing for a graphic artist design. Somebody might do it for short money.
Yeah.
I guess for the
Possibility.
sign, I'm just trying to think, how can we involve more community members so they feel like they're partners in this, but also do it in a cheap kind or inexpensive kind of a way. That might be an option also.
Yeah. Maybe you could follow up with Lori and Lori, Julianne and Lori about how that might work and, how that would go. Okay,
Rick, Judy has her hand up.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Judy.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Lori. Jen, I had the same thought, and just perhaps by sheer coincidence, I was at a meeting with a woman last night. It's a recurring meeting. And you kind of go around the table and say, do you have an ask? Okay. This woman basically said she's a retired graphic artist. She has some affiliate. I don't think she lives in Northborough, but she has some affiliation to Northborough. And she said, I'm a retired graphic artist, and all I do now is work for nonprofits, so I can't get paid. So this conversation just kind of triggered in my mind, that's one person that we could reach out to who is offering to do graphic design work. How do we underwrite it so it appears to be a nonprofit? And or does she have to hold true to that same, to her rule there? But certainly happy to reach out to this individual. And also thinking the timeline, if we're shooting to have a June 30th public forum, is it something we can kind of pull off, put out a call for some design ideas and then present those at the public forum? It's a rhetorical question, but just food for thought.
I think the community meeting is going to be more on just the basic beta group design, which isn't going to get down to those kind of details about signs and type of signs and what they would look like. So it's probably not the right time to do that.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? I don't know. Somehow, Lori, I got to talk to you about it. I have a hard time seeing hands go up. You see them better than I do. So maybe I need to be trained in better way of seeing hands go up. All right, let's move on. Next item was just to get a quick update on the request we put in a while ago through the conservation agent about what's going on with the possibility of looking at dams through the center of town here. I think, Lori, you've got an update from Vinny about that.
Yeah, it's a very small update. So they have been working with the Sudbury Valley trustees, and they did put out a request from DEP for information about the dams. Actually, there are two dams in particular that are of primary concern. And those are, let's see, Aluminum City and the River Street dams. But unfortunately, DEP has not provided the requested information. So without knowing who the owners are, pretty much any work on the dams has stalled. As you know, these dams are privately owned. So they are interested in doing like an information session for dam owners. But obviously they need to know who the dam owners are in order to do that.
So only DEP has that information?
So they have a list. Let's see what he called it. It's the Dam Registry Database.
Mm-hmm. And neither of these dams are on the registry?
DEP has not responded with the information.
And how many times have you reached out to them?
I haven't reached out to them at all. I believe SBT was doing it.
Well, I guess we can consider that we've reminded them. Are they going to reach out again?
Vinny said that he was going to follow up.
Jean Cahill, I hate to put you on the spot, but you're kind of in touch with ORS. Do you have they talked to you at all recently, or?
No, I have not heard anything about, it was kind of left in our court for our town to move forward with, and they would partner as a river interested organization in helping the town. But no, they're not taking this on, and I think as this committee has discussed it, it's a private dam issue. It's not the town's purview, but we can certainly, my question is the Registry of Deeds a place that might have property lines and designations on who owns the dams on various parcels?
I don't know about that. Lori, do you know if the Registry of Deeds would have something?
Sometimes, I haven't done any research on these dams, so I can't really say. But just, I do spend a good amount of time looking at plans, obviously. And, it's not always clear. Because, in some cases, dams may be, I'm going to speak to one case that I'm very familiar with here in Millbury, of course, because I've been here so long, where there is a dam that is located under a public way. And the public way is partly owned by Mass Highway, partly owned by the town of Northborough, and then there is a mill building affiliated. And so all three parties have been fighting over the ownership of this one dam for years and years and years because the dam is falling apart. And nobody wants to assume ownership of the dam because they don't want the liability nor the cost of fixing the dam. So it is often muddy as to the ownership.
It's an appropriate term to use.
That was very good, Rick. But it is important because as weather gets more intense, I think we need to figure this out because my understanding is that if you own a dam on your property, you should have insurance. And I don't know that if these owners don't even know they own it, I'm sure they'd like to know if they own it, but
They probably don't want to know.
Yeah.
ignorance is no excuse in the law, isn't that the thing?
Well, I think ultimately, we've requested this to be evaluated, and I think right now from a staff perspective, Vinnie's probably the staff person that needs to keep this moving, and from a committee perspective, the Conservation Commission is probably the commission that needs to, represent the town's interest in this kind of thing. So best we can do is ask Vinnie for updates, but if anybody has got more questions or wants to see this move faster, I would recommend just sort of contact Vinnie directly and just see what he's up to and impress upon him, the need to move this along to whatever extent more quickly kind of thing. But from our committee's perspective, I think, we've got this ball rolling, but it's kind of not our job to finish it at this point. I think it falls to the Conservation Commission and the conservation agent to work on this on the town's behalf. Okay, this next item, I'm just going to keep this, discuss any other master plan recommendations to consider for advancement as a constant agenda item here. I would continually encourage us to, if you're not familiar with the master plan, there's a way to get to it through the town's website to read through it. And then we have this matrix, this spreadsheet we developed that lists all the recommendations of the master plan and the status of each one. And I think as committee members, it's incumbent on us from time to time to review that matrix and the plan. And if any of us feels there's something in there that hasn't been addressed or needs to be addressed, to put on the agenda of this committee, something else on our agenda to consider doing. Obviously, the lion's share of our work since we've been formed has been downtown revitalization. but
Mm.
that's not the only reason we exist. And so we all have an opportunity here to stay abreast of the master plan and the matrix of where we stand on the recommendations. And I'm more than willing to add agenda items for us to discuss for other things in the master plan that we should be talking about and encouraging the proper people in town to take some action on.
Okay.
So just keep that in mind. If you're not familiar with where these things are, certainly send Lori an email and she can direct you to the proper places to find the online versions of these documents. Okay, moving on to the support letter for the Route 9 Corridor Improvement Project. You want to go through that, Lori?
Sure. So a little background information. I was approached by the Economic Development Director from the town of Southborough a few months ago to see if the town of Northborough was interested in partnering with Southborough and Westborough on a boroughs Route 9 corridor study. So back in March, I approached the select board to see if this is something that they were interested in, and they all thought it was a good idea. So I have proceeded accordingly. So the grant application for this is due on June 4th. The planners and the economic development directors of these communities have been working together to submit this grant application, prepare the narrative. We are looking for support letters. Of course, this was a key recommendation is to examine Route 9 for the potential, its economic development potential. Of course, we do have 7, actually, the scope of the project area within the town of Northborough is 1,000 feet around the midpoint of Route 9. And within that area, we have 7 commercial vacancies. And we also have some dilapidated buildings. Those are usually the commercial vacancies. Motel 6, thankfully, I've counted within that number. The Motel 6 is under construction right now. So the goal is to make it a Spark property. So a more high-end property. So the investment in that is, I believe, over $5 million. They ended up purchasing the abutting property so that they could do a new septic system. So then we have a couple of restaurants, the restaurant next door to that, the one associated with the O'Connell Lodge are vacant because they both have failing septic systems and some other issues. So that's the gateway to our community. Certainly it could look a lot better. The towns of Southborough and Westborough are also having challenges. Big challenges that they're contending with is they have all of these business parks, office parks that are now largely empty because of the fact that so many people now work from home. So they've got all these hulks that they're trying to figure out what to do with. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, make any modifications to the letter that you see fit. I did identify in the letter the various goals and objectives from the 2020 master plan that I thought fit in well with this project.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to participate in this, crosstown project here and anything we can do to get better usage. And as we've been talking about before, get things going on in there and generate more tax revenue from that part of town is a good idea. And I know that, basically trying to include goals from our master plan is a good way to demonstrate how this project fits into things the town is trying to accomplish. The only bullet point that I think is kind of a stretch is the fourth bullet down that says better link existing open spaces and use these linkages to connect community assets and create a more walkable community. I think that really is talking about, it's more about walkable, more trail opportunities and connecting spaces to walk on than it is about managing open space in general kind of thing. It talks about, you know, repurposing old infrastructure for trails development, such as the old trolley line or the aqueduct bridge kind of thing. So I think I just might remove that one bullet point. I think that
I
the other
can
ones,
tell, oops, sorry. I
think
can
the
tell
other
you
ones-
that my rationale for including that is that we're going to be looking at extending the B-Walt Trail.
Mm.
So the B-Walt runs parallel to Route 9.
Okay.
And Westboro has been actively working on constructing the B-Walt Trail. And it is set to terminate at Walmart in Northborough. So one of the things that I had specifically asked for to be included within this scope of work was to look at the feasibility of extending the B-Walt Trail to the Northborough Shrewsbury line and beyond. So that's the only reason why I included that.
Okay,
So one of the issues is, of course, we have the homeless shelter for refugees at the O'Connell Lodge. And
Mhm.
right now you've got those folks walking up Route 9, which is terrible. Because many of them don't have cars. So they're walking up Route 9 to get to the Y and, you know, to shopping, etc. So if we had the B-Wall Trail, then they wouldn't have to walk up Route 9. They could walk up the B-Wall. It would be a much more hospitable environment.
all right.
You can leave it in.
I didn't think of all of that. Okay, having heard that, guess it does make sense to leave it in. Any other comments or questions about this particular letter? Anybody in opposition to our committee?
Can you
sending
put
this?
the letter up? Can you share it? Because I all
can.
I have is,
It was in the earlier emails.
and I'm looking at, I don't know.
Let me pull it up on my email 1 sec.
Rick, did you get, I sent some corrections earlier. Did you get those?
I saw the, did you send them to me or to me and Lori?
Both, and then just you, I think. I was kind of trying to figure out whether I should just send it to you. They were more editorial type things.
Yeah, I didn't get it. I saw the email, but I didn't get a chance to open it. So if Lori hasn't already seen them, why don't you bring those up tonight? For Lori's benefit, okay.
Do you have your email in front of you? It was May 12th. She sent it. There was 4 attachments.
Oh, I was only looking at the one with 3 attachments. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Judy.
You're welcome.
All right, I'm almost there. I got it. All right. So now I'm going to share my screen. So 1 sec. Can you see that?
Not
Just
yet.
started, there it is. Okay.
There it is. Yeah, so the only corrections I had were, like I said, editorial. Let me see. Is this the Goddard Street one?
No,
we're
we're
not.
not doing Goddard Street.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah, we're not doing Goddard Street because they
Oh, yeah.
notified me this morning that they want to apply for the grant next year instead of this year. They're not ready.
My only quick correction on this one, or I don't even know if it's a correction, but if you go down to the first bullet point, the darkened one, and then you go to the first underneath that, coordinate land use planning, don't you think that land use should be capitalized because that's really part of a category?
You know, I put this word for word from the master plan.
Okay.
I mean, I can make that change. It wasn't written that way in the master plan, but
I just feel like then that you know to refer to that LU. It wasn't a big deal. It just felt like
what I was trying to do is like the dark circle, those are the goals, and then the open circle are the objectives under those goals.
I guess my opinion would be if in
Okay.
our current master plan, you just copied the text out verbatim, we should keep it in here,
yeah. Okay.
matching the master plan.
Lori, could you repeat how much property we have on Route 9 and how much Southborough has?
I can't tell you. I can tell you that there are 28 businesses. And then there's the 7 vacant parcels. When I extended the 1,000-foot buffer, I did capture the sports complex on Otis Street that's next to the Walmart. And I captured a few of the units in the Avalon development, as well as the lower parking center that's part of Northborough Crossing and the New England baseball. So kind of like the Carewell was the limit, the upper limit. So there was some businesses on Route 20 that were captured. Of course, expanse of Route 9 through Westboro and Southboro are much, much, much more extensive.
Mm.
So we only have a tiny fraction compared to what they have.
I mean, overall, I think it's great.
Any other comments, or are there any objections to having our committee provide this letter of support?
Nope.
Are there any hands up I can't see, Lori?
I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see. Nope, no hands up.
Do we have to take a vote on this, or can we just do this by consensus?
Think
If
it's
you could
about-
take a vote, that'd be
Take a
nice.
vote. Okay, I'll entertain a motion that the Master Plan Implementation Committee approves sending a letter of support for the borough's Route 9 corridor study.
Mr.
Second.
Chairman,
Yes.
did you motion or you?
No, I'm saying I'll entertain such a motion.
Oh,
Mr.
So
Chairman, I
moved.
move that the Master
So
Plan
moved.
Implementation Committee support the letter for the borough's 9 corridor study.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay. Let me get my little sheet here. Hey, Julianne,
Aye.
Millie,
aye.
Leslie,
Aye.
Tracy,
Aye.
Fran,
Aye.
Gene Kennedy,
Aye.
Gene Cahill,
Aye.
Rick Leaf votes aye. John Campbell,
Aye.
Jen Tolman,
Aye.
Judy Boyle.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay. One thing that wasn't on the agenda, but we need to just approve, we had Lori sent us the minutes for our January and March meetings. So let's start with January. Are there any changes or comments about the January minutes? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the January minutes as submitted?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Julianne,
Aye.
Millie,
Abstain.
Tracy? Hello, Tracy?
Aye.
Fran?
Aye.
Gene Kennedy?
Aye.
Gene Cahill?
Abstain?
Rick Leaf votes aye. John Campbell?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
And Judy?
I need to abstain. I wasn't a member yet.
Good idea. Good abstention.
Yeah,
Okay,
you
those
didn't-
minutes
you
are
didn't call
approved.
on me, but same thing.
I'm sorry, Leslie. How did I miss you? Okay. I'll do better on the next one. So now we have the March minutes. Amy had suggested some edits to those, which Lori included in the most recent version of the March minute she sent out. Are there any other changes or comments about the March minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the March minutes as amended.
So moved.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay, one more time. Julianne,
Aye.
Millie,
Abstain again.
Leslie,
Aye.
Fran,
Aye.
Gene Kennedy,
Aye.
Gene Cahill,
Abstain?
Rick Leaf votes aye. John,
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
Judy, were you here for that one?
I was. Aye.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other business that should come before this august body of residents tonight before we adjourn? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Didn't hear the motion yet.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
second. All right, one more time. Julianne,
Aye.
Millie,
Aye.
Leslie,
Aye.
Tracy,
Aye.
Fran,
Aye.
Gene Kennedy,
Aye.
Gene Cahill.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Gene. Sorry. Rick Leaf votes aye. John,
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
Judy.
Aye.
Okay, so next we will meet on July 17th. Will be our next meeting. We'll get more updates on where we stand with the Blake Street project and the community meeting kind of thing. And we'll take it from there. So thank you all for participating tonight and have a good rest of your week.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
You
Good
too.
night, all.
Bye, everybody.
Aye.
Good meeting.
Thanks for your
Good night.
support.